Welcome to the DFS pregame show here on RotoGrinders. I'm Jordan Cooper, a.k.a. BlenderEd, Blender HD, if you want to follow me on Twitter. And it's Monday, so you know what we do on Mondays. We bring in James McCool. It's Mondays with McCool, the co-author with me on the Theory of Daily Fantasy Sports. It's a 15-hour audio DFS masterclass that you can pick up at theoryofdfs.com. Devin's here producing early in the morning. We had to wake him up, right? He's not used to being, or maybe he's used to being up this early, but just not on this show. Daniel Hutchings is here. Wataz, good morning. Doug Montgomery, good morning. Hit that thumbs up button on your way in the door. Helps us out. Give me those thumbs. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the notification bell. We got a baseball slate coming up later. So you hit that notification bell. You'll know when Grinders Live comes on, Crunch Time comes on, one long stream at 2 hours before MLB lock. And James, I played MMA this weekend, James, and I used your tool.
You used my tool? Really?
I used your tool and as part of my process.
Cool. That's awesome.
As part of my process, and I played 150 lineups.
Mm-hmm.
Out of all 150 maxers, I was the 8th most in under fives.
Awesome. That's rad. That's great.
Which is what I aim for. I was out of the top 10. Mm-hmm. I was the least amount of uniques. I only had 43 uniques out of 150.
Yeah.
But I had 133 under fives, or 138, 137, something like that.
Yeah.
Under fives, which is obviously in a 14 fight slate. It's a little bit easier to be unique.
Yeah.
But I went through, I built 300 lineups like I normally do. And then I took the 300, I put it into your Excel spreadsheet. And from that 300, I was able to get rid of like 70 or 80
nice
lineups like immediately.
Yeah,
absolutely immediately. And then from there, I paired. Then I pared down from there. But that pretty much got rid of like all of the lineups that would have been like over 5 dupes.
Yeah,
I had like no question of like, okay, that's obvious. And this is after making a group, so it's like I already knew that like certain combinations were going to be used way too much. So I had 2 groups of like, don't use no more than one of this, and at least one to 3 of these people. It's like if that combines together, I'm most likely going to be less dupe. But still, there were certain combinations that even like that at like 50, and most of them were at 50,000.
Right.
Like 50,000, 49.9, like that type of stuff. But it made it so much quicker for me to just go eliminate those and then go through the rest. Yeah. And it's not like the rest were bad. It's just that I could only play 150 lineups. So I need to see like how much Charles Johnson, the biggest underdog. Like, yeah, I'd probably not. I don't think I'm going to play him in a quarter of my lineups. Let's get rid of some of those, even though they are unique or under 5. So like even though the number in and of itself, like the predicted uniques, is not precise. It's actually more precise than my method.
Yeah. Well, and that was the big thing, right? Is when I first initially sent it to you, it was directionally accurate, but not precise at all, right? Like it was just bad. And then because of that, I was able to rework it. And now I am very, very happy with where it ends up getting to. I think that the logic in there and like the scaling, the variable that I added in with the scaling salary used, I think that that's like the extra juice that makes it that much more accurate. So I'm happy that you're using it. That's awesome.
Right. Because that's the main thing of determining, because I'm aiming for lineups primarily that are the most unique for using most of the salary. So obviously, as you go up the salary scale, the chances of it being duped goes up higher. So like a 50,000 lineup that even with using product ownership that says, oh, it's average due 2 or 3, may actually end up being 7, 8, 9 because it's a 50K lineup. So I'd rather be able to see that, while a 49-8 lineup like that may actually be unique.
Right.
Like going through, like my average salary on Saturday was like 49.7. Yet I still had 133 under fives and 43 uniques.
Something that because after I built that, right, I one of the other tools is that giant like CSV recap analysis tool that I built out, and that one like I have now built it out so that it can handle MMA and Showdown, and it can handle baseball, and it can handle football, right? So it has a whole bunch of different little tools and whistles and stuff like that. But building that one out, one thing that I thought was really interesting in breaking down the recent slates has been Brian Jester and his ability to not only produce uniques and under fives, because like you can do that and you can build lineups that are going to be unique and under five and don't necessarily project all that well. And usually a lot of people, when they do it, they're just like, oh, well, I'm just going to hammer in the guys who are lower owned, and that's going to make it so they're unique and under five. And like, that's awesome. But something that he does that I think is really, really well done in his portfolio management is being able to spread his exposure around to the higher owned players as well, and like really spread out his exposures and still maintain uniques and under fives. And I think that the tool that I built out is a very, very good way to do something like that, because you can go through and, like you said, automatically, just like anything that it says is projected for over probably 10, you just cut out. Like there's no reason to even have it in.
Right. A way to use it is I could build, and maybe not this coming weekend because I'm not going to be here, but the weekend afterwards, build 300 lineups with a certain combination. Like put the chalk together. Just like put kind of like, okay, main event guy and this popular underdog and this popular 9K guy, and then go give me 300 lineups of those.
Mm-hmm.
And then no matter what the salary, no salary constraint, and then take the 300 and then paste it in. And I'm pretty sure that you could go through and go, oh, okay, most of these lineups are too duped.
Yeah.
But out of the 300, maybe like there's maybe 8 to 10 that are like, well, these may be fine.
Yeah.
Like this is a combination that like if you built a lot of lineups like it, you're probably not going to get to. But this lineup at 49.4 with this combination is fine. This lineup with 49.2 is fine. Now all the 50Ks at 49.9s are bad, right? They're all too duped. But you'll find like, okay, it's still it's not a combination I'm using much, but here are more unique versions of it. So you're not stuck saying I want like if there's like 2 or 3 8% owned fighters, you're not playing like a third of them in all of your lineups.
Yeah,
or you're constantly playing the 8% 9K guy that no one wants to play, and then like the 6% 7K guy that no one wants to play. And it's like, well, you got both of them in the 30 year lineups because that's the easiest way to not be duplicated. Well, you could go through and go, well, yeah, the main event favorite may be over-owned, but let's see I can still play 35% of that guy as long as the 35% I'm playing are in those unique lineup combinations. And then just using lineup HQ to build 300 lineups of each iteration and just throw. I mean, dude, you made it as simple as possible. I literally I export from lineup HQ, highlight everything, cut and paste directly in, and it's done. Once it pastes in all the numbers, everything fills in.
Yeah, I didn't even have to use it. I didn't even have to use any macros for this one. Like some of the tools that I've built up, you have to press a button to make it do those things. But like I'm trying to make it so you literally just like paste the values in and it shows you whatever you want to see. So that's gonna be cool. There is a question here. DJA Dog 3K. Is there any tools like this we can use for tiers mode? This tool that Jordan is referring to is actually you can use it for feasibly. You could use it for anything. Right? Like you can just paste in your CSV and it's going to go across. I built it specifically for MMA, but you could do it for Showdown. You could do it for tiers. All that you need is you need the lineups and you need the projected ownership. And it'll tell you how many dupes you're expected to have. I would think that maybe there's a little bit, it won't be quite as precise with something like tiers, just because I think that when it comes to the duping logic, like this duping logic is really, really good for MMA. I'm not sure that it would exactly carry over to other sports, but I think it'll still be very directionally accurate and absolutely still usable for other stuff.
Right. I mean, it's going to be useful. I mean, it's useful for NFL Showdown.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It's understand that Scorpius is asking. We're working on this as a part of the sequel for the Theory of Daily Fantasy Sports. So it's going to be 10 to 15 hours of new audio for advanced players, and Excel tools. And James, being that they are tools in Excel, this is open source, which means you could just take the tools and do whatever the hell you want with them, right? I mean, like you may not be I'm not an expert in Excel, but if I could take a tool and add an extra column and add it and change. I want to move this over there, or I want to create another sheet that does this also. It's like, just feel free to add it on. Feel free to change whatever it is that you want. You'll always have the original files, right? You can always read that, like, oh, I screwed something up, let me start over type of thing, right? So it's not like this is not like a web-based service. It's not like signing up to RotoGrinders and getting lineup HQ. It's like, here's some research tools to help you speed along, and they're probably best used with lineup HQ. Like I've been saying, it's built for, I'm going to make a ton of lineups in an optimizer, which obviously would suggest lineup HQ, and then be able to just shove them into Excel and have it do the work for me, so I don't have to do it in lineup HQ and then re-put it back in. Right. So I could go through, and if I wanted to make 3,000 lineups, right, on a baseball slate, for instance, I'm like, well, it's a 12-game MLB slate, and I'm playing DraftKings, and I want to see, instead of using, like in lineup HQ, you could build by stack type, right, and set a percentage, but like how many, well, what happens if I want to see if there's any 3-3 lineups, any 4-2 lineups, any, like, you get into the phase of like, well, how much percent should I look for? I mean, it's going to default to building the best types of correlations first. Well, what happens? Why can't you just go in and go, I'm going to build 300 of each? Right? Literally just go through it. Just go, I'm going to build 300 of each type. So now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So I have 2,700 lineups. And you paste them all into Excel, into the tools that we're making. And you go from there. So here's your 5-3 lineups. And you go, okay, let me pick 10 out of these. And you go to 4X lineups, which is a 4-man stack and 4 one-offs. And you see that high projection, but not a good, I mean, because you don't have that much correlation there. And you go, are there lineups that are very high leverage that I could still use because the projection is high, right? That it makes up for the correlation value of, not having the secondary stack. If you want to do that research, it's so much easier to do it all at once in Excel and then compare them to each other. So it's quite possible to build 3,000 lineups of each type, paste them all in of all the stacks, and then sort it from there. And maybe when you play, if you're going to play, let's say 150 lineups or something, you end up picking 150 lineups that are the best of whatever metrics you want to sort by. And maybe it turns out that you play 27% 5-3 stacks. And then you play 20% of 5. Like, it's just, and maybe there's 3 lineups that are 3-3s in there. It's like you didn't have to actually make that choice of like, how many of these do I want to play? And actively say, I'm going to build all 4-4 lineups. I'm going to build all 5-2 lineups. It's like, no, build all of each. There's no functionality in lineup HQ for you to have like 10,000 lineups. Right. Or to make 10,000 lineups. I mean, it's possible. It's technically possible, but if we made a tool, if RotoGrinders had a tool where you're building 10,000, 50,000 lineups, the site would get pretty slow when there's hundreds of thousands of people using it. So like 300 at a time, if you want to build on NFL, especially NFL coming up, right? You got plenty of time. It's Thursday night. It's not like there's going to be like late scratches really or anything like the projections are the projections for the most part. Maybe ownership will change a little. You're going to go through and go, I'm going to spend all Saturday building lineups. And if you want to be, just nuts and say, I'm going to build 300 at a time until I get to 30,000. And then just go in Excel and just say which X amount I'm going to run from here. So it's like, that's kind of the purpose of why these tools are being created as part of Theory of DFS, the sequel, the advanced players version, because the advanced players version is all about application.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The first, the main course, theoryofdfs.com, more about the theory, hence the theory of daily fantasy sports. But how do you take those theories and actually put them into action? So the applications needs tools like this, right? So that's why it's for advanced players. Going directly to that, you're going to be like, I don't know why you'd be using any of this. And why do I need Excel tools if I don't even understand what leverage is or correlation is or how that affects my lineups in general? Because then you'd look and these Excel tools would make absolutely no sense to you.
Right.
Like, why do I care about duplication in NFL Showdown? Well, if you don't understand that, then you're not going to understand how to even use these tools because you don't even understand the concept of a plus EV line.
Right. Yeah, and most of these tools that we're putting together, that they're going to come in a way that once you have figured out how to play DFS, you have to understand how to maximize how you are playing DFS. And that's mostly what these tools are. Is like, yeah, you can build a portfolio of say 150 lineups or like 300 lineups or whatever like that. Like anybody can just go and plug into an optimizer and run lineups and then plug them into DraftKings. But like if it was that easy, then there would never be any edge. The edge comes into curating the way that you build out your portfolio management and putting together lineups that fit different contest selections and understanding what contests you should be playing and how to enter those lineups in. Like Jordan said, you can build out 3,000 lineups. And one of the tools that I am currently building right now is going to allow you to set weights on the 3 different levers, right? Projection, correlation, and leverage. You're going to be able to set weights on those things and then sort the lineups based on those weights that you put things in. And then you're going to be able to take those lineups and say, okay, well, I have the single entry contest here, right? Like I'm playing the 121, right? Or something like that. So I'm going to take the thing that has the highest projection and I'm going to put it in there. And then you can say, oh, well, now I'm going to go build for the highest leverage for GPPs, right? And then you can ramp up the variation or ramp up the weight on the leverage variable and then rerun it and resort it. And then you can find out of your 3,000 lineups, which ones fit best for the large field contests. And like, that's how you curate for the contest that you are building. That's how you decide on your portfolio.
Right. And also find thresholds or ratios. So like, for instance, if you were to build 300, 3,000, whatever amount of lineups you want to paste in, it's like, okay, the easy part is, well, what's the highest projected lineup? What's the lowest projected lineup? What's the highest owned lineup? What's the lowest loan line? You know, what lineup has the most amount of correlation, the least amount of correlation, right? Not necessarily by coefficient, but by like more people from the same game, the same team. But how about the ratio of like, I'm looking for lineups that are within this projection and this ownership, right? Show me those lineups. So it's like you look at the top. Maybe the top is, 150 point projection and 200 points in ownership, 200% in ownership. It's like, well, I'm looking for the highest in around the 150 range. Well, imagine having 5,000 lineups and doing that. Like that's going to be tough. Right. And then also, as I've shown on this show before, trimming lineups. So I'd build 20 lineups right now for today's baseball slate as it stands right now with the bat projections. So like, although it is a blunt methodology of using ownership sum, probably better to use ownership product, but maybe you'll be able to do that with the tool, the Excel tools. That typically, if given the choice, you're not going to want to play a lineup that is lower projected that is higher owned, right? Given the choice, it doesn't mean that lineup is minus EV. It's just that the other lineups are higher expected value. So, like in lineup HQ, you could build 20 lineups. You could build 300 lineups. So I could build 300. I just did 20 right now for time purposes. And you go through and you go, okay, here's the top line. I did 5X stacks, right? And I go, okay, it's going to sort. I'm sorting by total fantasy points, the median total projection. And I go 116.31. Well, the lineup below it, which is 0.15 lower projected, is actually higher owned based on the ownership projections, right? So If I had a choice between the two lineups, I'd rather play the first one.
Mm-hmm.
It's slightly higher projected and it's lower owned. So I'm getting rid of the one underneath it. This one's 112. So as the projection goes down, the ownership should go down also. So I'm going to get rid of any lineup that is more owned than the lineup above it. Because why would I play that lineup versus the lineup above it? Right? So you get rid of this lineup. You get rid of that lineup. Right? You have to beat 112.54. Get rid of this lineup. Get rid of this lineup. Get rid of it. Keep on going. Get rid of this lineup. Keep on going. 112.90. No. 116. 126. 122. Keep on going. Try to beat 112.54. Okay, in the first 20, can we even do it? No. Right? So like out of this 20 build, it's like these are the two lineups that have that ratio where the ownership sum is commensurate with their projection. Now imagine trying to do that with 3,000 lineups, right? Manually, or even 300. If you could build 300 in lineup HQ. Now imagine I could build 300 in lineup HQ and trim like that by just taking all 300 lineups and putting them right into Excel, and then sorting by fantasy points and you seeing the ownership, and then having all the lineups that fit that characteristic highlighted with a color. It's like all the green lineups are the ones that are the higher owned for the lower salary based on that order. And then imagine have another button that says trim all the other lineups. Where it's like, okay, well, you have 300 lineups and then 45 go down periodically like this. Well, leave me the 45 and get rid of the other 255. Like, and then you go, okay, well, I got those lineups. Maybe you go to a different stack type and you go and then you cut and paste those 45 lineups, James, and you put it into another tool, another sheet that shows you the exposures of all your players.
There you go.
Right? That shows you everything about those lineups, about what the total ownership, total projection, just a lineup analyzer. So you could look there and you go, oh, wow, out of these 45 lineups, I have like all of this starting pitcher. Which is probably the reason why that starting pitcher is only 7% owned. And that's what's giving, what gives you the most under-owned players.
Right.
Right. Whenever you trim like that, obviously, you're going to get more of the under-owned players and less of the over-owned players. And imagine being able to do that not only by ownership sum, by ownership product, which is a little bit more precise than ownership sum. So, like, to me, these things go hand in hand. Like, the concept, the theory in the course, in the first course, is, well, what does leverage do for you? Right? What are the levers? How do they counteract one another? Right? Well, then people ask, it's like, okay, now that I know this, it's like, how do I actually apply this in practice? Well, these are the types of things of applying it in practice. Like, well, if you go through lineups, you should not be playing a lineup that is higher owned than is lower projected than its ownership compared to another lineup. The only reasons that you would play the other lineup is, one, you're playing a lot more lineups. Two, you're taking risk management into consideration, meaning that, well, if a guy is 1% owned and projects for 1 million points, like, do you want to play 100% of a 1% owned guy? Right. Like, how much risk do you want to take on? And hopefully, I don't know if you're integrating it into the lineup analyzer to be able to measure that.
Yeah,
basically the correlation coefficient of players in a portfolio.
It is going to be a separate tool, but you're going to be able to take your portfolio of your lineups and you're going to be able to paste it into a tool and then press a button, and it's going to show you it's going to show you what players are correlated to one another in your entire portfolio. And then, actually, a really cool idea, which you and I hadn't talked about doing this, but I'm going to do it anyway because I think it's cool. You're going to be able to put in up to 5 players, and then you're going to be able to see who correlates the most with those 5 players. So you're going to be able to take a stack like say that you were doing it for baseball, right?
Mhm.
You're able to take a stack of players in your portfolio, and then you're going to be able to run it through all of your lineups, and you're going to see who that stack is most dependent on in order to find success. So like the application of that is, say you have a Yankees stack, right? And the Yankees are typically expensive. You plug in the 5 players of your Yankee stack that are the ones that you have the most of, and then you run it through the correlations, and you see, oh, well, I'm 100% exposed to Martin Maldonado in those lineups. So even if the Yankees do very well, you still then also need Martin Maldonado because he's 100% exposed to that stack, that 5 players.
Right, which is basically an extension of finding the lineup correlation. We're not talking about the correlation between the players, but the lineup correlation, because what in using lineup HQ, or optimizer in general, what we're trying to do from a macro standpoint is teach you the applications of these theories while having you avoid the common mistakes people make with optimizers that they don't see, right? They build, I'm going to build 150 lineups. What people do is they focus so much on exposure percentages when that's the last part of anything. That's a risk. These columns are for risk management, not for strategy. So what'll end up happening is that someone today will go in and say, I want to play 50% Sean Manaea, and I want to play 50% Aaron Ashby, and build 150 lineups. You know, I want to play at least 50% of each, and then find that, like, their top, out of 150 lineups, their top 75 will have Manaea and Ashby, and then the next 75 will have neither of them.
Yep.
Right.
Exactly.
And the top 25 lineups they make are absurdly too high owned. Right. And the bottom 25 lineups are way too low projected, because all an optimizer is doing is trying to give you what you tell it to give you. But at default, it's going to try to jam in as many median fantasy points as possible until told otherwise. Right. So it's going to be like, okay, what's the best possible lineup with the lineup pool that you have? Right. Okay, put that or whatever stack, whatever commands that you gave it. What's the best possible lineup? Okay, what's the second best possible lineup? Then if it goes to like, well, I need to give you the second best possible lineup, but I need to give you, because you set unique players to 3, something that's a 3v3 of the lineup above it. And then that gives you now the third best lineup. And it's quite possible that it's playing those 2 pitchers over and over again. Right. And then changing 1 or 2 batters and another, and it's different stack. And it's like the first 10, 15 lineups are like most probably like single entry style lineups. And then that are too high owned. I mean, they may not even be, they may even too high. They may be the chalk. You may get like almost a stacked version of a cash lineup first. And then on the bottom, because it has to make 3v3s 150 times, and only use 50% of these guys, and no more than 20% of that guy, your bottom lineup is projected like 49 points lower than anything else. Like, and you go, and those lineups are horrible. And then you go, and then people put them in. And I'm like, great, 30 of your lineups are bad. 30 of your lineups are negative EV, because the top half and the top part and the bottom part, but you looked and you go, oh, but I have 50, I have 50% of Ashby, I have 50% of Manaea. And then what ends up happening is one of them does really well, right? Manaea puts up 37 points. Ashby, not so much. Kind of gets killed, right?
-4. Yeah.
Right? And you go, well, good thing. Half my lineup should be fine, because, the -4 is only in half my lineups. And you go, look, and you go, well, I'm going to find a lineup with Manaea that doesn't have Ashby in it. And you go, why can't I find that? Right, you keep on going down through your lineups, and you're like, well, I could find Odorizzi Brubaker lineups, I could find Tyler Gilbert lineups, but all of my Ashby lineups have Manaea in it, and it's like all those lineups are dead to win now, even though you put in the right exposures, right? The tool's only going to do what you tell it to do. So imagine if you built your 150 lineups. And to stop those errors, you throw it into Excel and you go, Oh, crap. I didn't realize that, the correlation coefficient of Manai and Ashby is 1. Right? It probably wouldn't be 1, but you would say like 0.98, which means they're basically in like 73 lineups together. There's only like 2 lineups where they're separated or something like that. Imagine doing that and going, oh, now that I know that, let me fix that.
Yep.
Let me find a way that's different. Or you go through and you see in the lineup analyzer, you put in your 150 lineups and you go, wow, you're right. The projections of these are high and too high ownership, and the bottom are. Now you can see that in lineup HQ, right? I mean, if you actually look through that, I tell people, look through your lineups, make sure. Or you may end up finding out stuff that you didn't even realize that you did. Right? You look and you go, I'm going to build 20 lines. Maybe I'm building 150 lineups. I'm building 20 lineups. It's like, okay, I built 20 lineups. Maybe you hand-built lineups. Okay, we're not even talking about, okay, what happens if I don't use lineup HQ and I hand-build lineups? Okay, hand-build 20 lineups. There are tons of times I used to hand-build 20 lineups that I would hand-build and think that I'm getting different. And next thing you know, like 2 of my lineups are like only a 1v1 of each other that I didn't even realize, right? Or I have too much of this guy with that guy. I didn't realize like all of my Aaron Ashby lineups, I'm playing like Aaron Judge as a one-off, which could be fine. So I hand-build 20 lineups, and then you go into your Draftkings, you download your entries, you take there's the lineup. So you take the lineups, you throw them into our little tool in Excel, and then you go, okay, what are the characteristics of my 20 lineup set? It's like, oh, wow. All my Ashby lineups have Judge.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, do you want that? That could be fine. And then you go in. It's like, okay, now that I know that, you go in and you take 2 of the Judge lineups and you change it to Soto, right? Or Ohtani, or say, just another high-priced outfield one-off type of thing. Or you change the pitcher to Odorizzi in one of the lines. Or just to give you an insight of like, okay, do I want, that's as a risk management factor, do I want my lineup so correlated to each other?
Mm-hmm.
And as of right now, there's literally no tool in the industry that shows you your portfolio in that regard. It'll show you exposures, but like I said before, just looking at exposures, it's like, look, I'm twice the field on this guy. James, how many times has someone told you that there were 3 times the field on like the guy that you needed to have to win, and the person ends up losing money, right? That's like, well, he was a 20% owned guy. I had 60% of the guy that hit 4 home runs, and I lost because, and then you look through, it's like, well, all those lineups had this 2K player that got 0, or that pitcher, or the 3% owned pitcher that got blown up,
or
right?
They had the rest of the stack with them, and the rest of the stack didn't do anything because that person scored all 4 home runs.
Right. It's like, yeah, you have 60% of this guy, but like 30% of it is that stack.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, okay, so those lineups don't matter, right? And then this lineup, you had the same one-off in half of them,
mm-hmm.
right? So those lineups don't matter. And then you had the same pitcher, and next thing you know, you're looking at your lineups, they're only 2v2s of each other. So
Yep.
all of those 80 lineups that you had out of your 150, your 90 lineups of the 150, you're way over the field, but they're all too similar to each other,
mm-hmm.
that it's not just that guy doing well. You needed like 3 things to happen for all of those lineups to do well, and they're all sitting very close to each other in the standings of your contest. Like these are two I believe, James, the 2 biggest errors when using optimizers. Right? Is not understanding the correlation of players in between your lineups, and not understanding the clumping that could happen when you're telling a tool what to do and how to counteract those clumping type of things. People just they think they put in magic settings. They're like, I'm going to build 150 based on a magic setting, then go, those should be good. And then they don't go through and realize that most of the time, the top 10% and bottom 10% are bad lineups, mm-hmm. in general, unless you intervene.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would absolutely agree with that. I think that this tool, and I've built tools like this before for other pretty high volume guys in the industry because, like you said, that you just don't have access to this kind of thing anywhere, and it's vital to understand the lineups that you're building out.
Well, you have access. You could do it manually,
but it's hard.
Right, it's harder manually. But the problem is that without the course, like people that don't take the course and don't understand this, fall into building half their lineups as negative EV lineups, even using optimizers and using projections that like they don't understand why those lineups are bad to begin with.
Well, and most people have no idea how to use an optimizer to begin.
Oh, that's the point of that. That's kind of the point of these types of tools. It's like now that you're trying to apply these theories, how do we like what is the makeup of a plus EV lineup? Like so many people ask, like, so what exactly is a plus EV lineup? Mm-hmm. And I go, well, any lineup that has a higher chance of returning positive ROI over the rake compared to the field.
Mm-hmm.
So your job is to build higher EV lineups than the field. And a lot of times the field builds really bad lineups. So the worse that the contest is. So like for instance, in a large field contest with a flatter payout structure, the worse and worse your opponents get, the way, I mean, this happens in any contest, but even the Millie Maker, the worse and worse your opponents are, the more and more profitable lineups there are to play.
Yep.
Okay, so that's why people. So this is a contest. This is from the new course. When you play let's say a 500 person high stakes contest with, let's just say they're all good players. The score you need to win is lower, right? You're not trying to beat 100,000 entries,
mm-hmm.
right? But the average expected value in comparison of the lineups is much higher.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you compared that 500 set to the 100,000, right? So you take a look at those 500 and go, yeah, this lineup that may be fine let's take a 500-man dollar contest. And in that dollar contest, let's just use as an example, half the field is horrible. That half the field is, and let's say they're really horrible. Like they're putting in guys that aren't even starting, right? They're not even submitting lineups. Let's even get to that. Like that's the extreme. Half the field is literally not submitting lineups. They're guaranteed zeros. So in that contest, how great of a lineup do you need to be profitable?
Not that great.
Right. But now you go up to a 500-man, $777 contest where everyone's good. No one's not submitting a lineup. So even though they're both the same field size, right? Let's say they're even the same price, right? Doesn't matter. The price for the entry fee doesn't matter. Just that obviously at higher stakes, you're typically getting better players, right? But it could be a 777 and just here's one contest where half the field has literally not submitted a lineup. And here's where everyone submitted a lineup.
Mm-hmm.
So in the contest, even if 500 people, that half the field has not submitted a lineup, you know how many profitable lineups you can make for that contest?
So many.
I mean, way more. I mean, if you knew that, you'd be like, well, do I even need to, can I play my cash lineup in this? Right? Even though you'd never, even in a 500-man contest, you're like, why in baseball, let's say? Like, why would I just build an unstacked mess? Don't I at least want to stack something? You don't, 5-man stack, 4-man stack, something or other. It's like, I don't know. I think your cash lineup type of, top projected lineup, no matter what, with correlation, that may be profitable if half the field isn't even submitting a lineup. I mean, like, so if that's the case, you know how many lineups are profitable? You could probably spend all day. A million lineups?
Think empirically, like think about it mechanically, right? Like if you have a 500-man contest and 250 of the players are not playing anything, then that means that only 50% now are actually competing, right? So then where do you have to finish in that set of players to end up making a profit?
Probably
right?
Half of that.
Only half of that, 25%, right? So at that point, playing a cash game lineup is probably the right move.
Right, a 50th percentile lineup will probably min cash. That probably if half the field has not submitted a lineup and a min cash is still only 1.25 at the 75th percentile mark, well, you're getting rid of half the contest. You've already gotten rid of half the contest. So really, that to hit that 75th percentile mark is technically just a 50th percentile outcome.
Yep.
Which is essentially what you're building for a cash lineup. Now, is that the most profitable lineups you can make for that contest? No, but you're probably cash enough that you beat the rake slightly, right? You probably maybe have a 2 or 3% ROI with just throwing your cash lineup in that type of contest. Yet, if you did that in the same contest, but everyone submits a lineup, you'd probably lose out to you'd be minus 20%. ROI.
More than that. Yeah. I mean,
right in that type of contest, because you're not going to min cash enough and you're probably not going to win anywhere close to enough. So like when you think in terms of those types of extremes, it's like, so the concept in and of itself of the stronger the opponents, the less amount of profitable lineups there are to play, and the more picky you need to be as far as which ones do you play. So the differences between, well, this lineup is 2 points in projection difference, but about the same ownership. Like those extra 2 points in projection or the extra 20 percentage points in ownership matter a lot more in the stronger contests because the edges are thinner. You're playing the other contest. Even if it's a large field contest, but large field contests tend to have the worst players in it. Not 50% of the field, not submitting a lineup, but 20% of the field may have a lineup that your worst lineup that you can make is still better than.
Yeah, 25 to 30% of a large field contest is pretty much just dead anyway.
Right. Is negative EV like right out of the gate.
Yeah.
So how many plus EV lineups can you make? You could make a lot more. Imagine you got rid of those 30% of lineups and you put stronger players in there. Now the amount of profitable lineups you can make goes down significantly. So that lineup that projects for, let's say in basketball, projects for 15 points lower, right? Low ownership also, 20 points lower. Like that's a high variance. That's a low percentage lineup that in a strong contest you wouldn't play because it wouldn't beat the field often enough. But in a weak field contest, that may actually be a profitable lineup. May not be the most profitable lineup, but it will be a profitable lineup. So when going to building stuff via an optimizer and using these tools, it's like, how often do I say on a lot of these shows that, especially like in baseball, especially high variance sports, like we have a slate tonight that's what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 games?
Yeah, 11.
11 games? Like in the large field contest tonight, the relay throw or whatever on DraftKings, or whatever the $5 contest on FanDuel, how many plus EV lineups? I mean, I could build 20,000. I don't know. I mean, like
a lot,
30,000 lineups that would be profitable. Now, I'd love the highest EV lineups, but also realize the highest EV lineups, they also have the highest standard deviations. So you may not want to play 150 of those lineups, even though, over the course of a million trials, those would be the most profitable, just that the swings would be ridiculous. But you want to play a nice subsection of all different standard deviations of lineups. But the choice of lineups to play is that big. But you go to the Monster or something on the FanDuel, or you're playing the you're playing the Thunderdome. Let's say, I don't even know if they ever even run the Thunderdome on a Monday MLB slate, but let's say it was a 12-man Thunderdome. How many plus EV lineups are there for the 12-man Thunderdome? Not 30,000. Maybe 100? 200? Something like that compared to...
On an 11-game slate? Yeah, probably.
A couple of hundred, probably. Yeah. Right? So it's like, that's the difference. So when people ask me, it's like, well, I have can I play this lineup or that lineup? It's like, you could play either of those lineups. Both look profitable to me, right? Just you're trying not to play lineups that are too at the top end of the spectrum or the bottom end of the spectrum. They're either too high owned or too low projected. But that's the same in any sport. But how do you do that functionally? I've shown on this show how to do it functionally in Lineup HQ. It just involves a lot of Well, I'm going to build 300 lineups a bunch of times and then eliminate the ones that I don't want. And then maybe 5 hours later, I'm done. Right? Like you can do it that way. Right? So if you're building only for like, I only have to choose 3 lineups. Like you don't have to build 900 lineups to choose 3 lineups.
You know how much faster it's going to be when you have this tool and you don't have to take 5 hours to do it?
I don't take 5 hours to do it, but
right.
You could if you want. If you were really finicky, you could.
Mm-hmm.
But most of the time, the lineups that you're trimming are probably, I would say, 80% of the lineups that you're trimming are plus EV lineups. It's just that they're not as plus EV as the other lineups.
Right. Well,
right?
and,
so like worst case scenario, you're still playing profitable lines.
And in comparison to the relative nature of the other lineups in your portfolio, like that's where it gets sticky. Is you don't want to have too many that are too close together and not quite plus EV as other ones, and that's where you want to try to go.
Right. And the point being is that if you're playing a large field contest, you're playing the mini max type of thing. It's like you could feel free to build 3,000 and spread it out, and based on your risk management, it's just I'm gonna play a bunch of this, a bunch of that, a bunch of this, a bunch of this, and whatever. But even if you're just playing one lineup for single entry contests, or 3 lineups for 3 max, or 5 lineups, this still can be useful because you could then still use a tool like Lineup HQ, go through, build 20 lineups of each stack type. Lock in a pitcher and go, let me see what lineups look with this pitcher in it, with this combination. And then go, okay, well, now that I have 10 different builds, you have 200 lineups. So I just export all of them and paste them in and go, okay, based on all my sorting, I'm going to get rid of this, get rid of that, Next thing you know, you're down to 18 lineups. And you're like, okay, out of these 18 lineups, I want to pick 3. And you go, okay, well, and you look, and maybe all 18 lineups are fine. If you were to randomly pick 3, you'd be okay. You'd be perfectly fine. But then you look at one and you go, I don't want to play Pirates today. Like just arbitrarily. And you look and you look through and you go, okay, 12 of these lineups have Pirates in it. So now you have 6 lineups left. Right? And then out of the 6 lineups, pick 3. And you go, well, I don't want to play all of these 2 pitchers together. Okay, then don't. Right? So like it gets you down to that, like, okay. Like once you were down to that 18, once you were down to a certain point, then I mean you could randomly pick whatever you want. But if I don't like guys with the last name that starts with a G. Oh, that
I was just gonna say, like once you get down to that 18, man, just equals rand, open close parentheses, and just
right. You could do that if you want.
I think that's that, and we've talked about that a lot before, and I won't get super deep into it right now because we have some questions in the chat. But I think that those last 18 lineups, that's the biggest waste of time that anybody can possibly have. You get down to that last 18 lineups and you are just killing yourself over the 1v1s and the 2v2s, and I'm just like, just pick some. Just go for it.
For the other day, I had Roman Quinn in I was playing a Tampa lineup. He was batting 9th against the Royals or something. Because right now I'm only playing like 4 or 5 lineups a slate for baseball. It's like, well, it fit the parameters. I'm like, that's what I'm playing. Like,
there you go. Yeah.
I had to choose between 2 different Tampa stacks, right? Basically, just between 2 different lineups. And they're both about the same owned and about the same project. Like they're pretty much the same.
Mm.
Other than it's like a 4v4 of players because of the other stack that's in there in a pitcher, and the Tampa stack or whatever. It's like, well, this one has Mejia catcher and this one doesn't. Like, what am I doing? I'm sitting here going, what am I doing? Like what? Like, do I want to play Roman Quinn or not? If I decided it's like I don't want to play nine hitter Roman Quinn, then I just get rid of that lineup and whatever the other lineup is I play.
Yeah.
But I'm sitting there going, do I want to play Roman? Like, and I'm going, I can't believe I even spent 7 seconds on this.
There will be people frequently, and like I've just gotten to the point where I'm just like, man, I don't answer questions like that. Just like flip coin. But people will be like, oh well, I've been sitting on this for 10 minutes. Like I don't know who to pick. And I'm like, bro, it doesn't matter. It literally does not matter who you pick.
Look at the 2 lineups that we have. I would just, when I put in 5X, this is only a unique of 1. So like here's the 2 lineups, like Greinke, Manaea, Greinke, Ashby. It's like, what's the 2v2? Okay, we got Matt Muncy, Turner, Gamel, Mitchell. So basically this is a 2v2 of Manaea, and Mitchell versus Ashby and Gamble. But the projection is like a difference of like point what? 0.32. And the ownership is commensurate with like one slightly lower owned. Like functionally, these two lineups are about,
that is to me exactly the same lineup.
Right.
There's not a single thing in my head that says that I want to play one or the other. Does not matter to me.
Right. Assuming that the numbers are correct.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and if you're building off of projections, then you trust that the numbers are correct.
Right. Then you try right. You're like, no, I think Sharman I is going to be 40% owned. Well, then obviously, then this ownership would be. Once we add 15 more points in ownership to this lineup, then it's like, well, I could sacrifice like 20 points in ownership for only 0.3. Like, yeah, then the bottom lineup is better.
Yep, there you go.
Right, but at this point, they're pretty much like, feel free to flip a coin.
Yep.
Right, but how do you get to the flip a coin decisions? That's the main part of what we're talking about when it comes to the theory of daily fantasy sports for advanced players. You could buy the first course, which is what I would suggest. Trust me, we're not going to dumb down the second course for the sake of doing a remedial class on the first one. So go get it. 15-hour audio DFS masterclass, theoryofdfs.com.
So some questions here. Well, first, I mean, Hutchins, it would be better than 50% better with half the field gone because of the rake, which is now negative. That is correct. Yep. Do we know how much the Theory DFS 2 will cost yet? I don't think we've talked through all of that.
No, I do. I could say it.
Oh, go for it. Yeah.
$195.
$195. Cool. So $195. And I will say $195, that is more than the first book, but I have put in
it's not a book, it's an audio course, just to be
sorry, audio course. This should cost $2,500 with all
that's a little even I would say it's a little
well, and that is directly based on how much I charge for the stuff that I build, because I've built stuff for guys in the industry before. And I charge $50 an hour, and I have put in at least 50 hours into these tools. So it's a massive deal. Hutchins, it would be in the thousands, but in the same ballpark, talking about that 500-man contest where we're talking about plus EV lineups. Can you please explain what you mean by plus EV lineup? Yep, it is expected value. And yeah, that's all the things.
Right. And also, if you've bought the first course, you'll get the second course with the because there'll be a combo. So for anyone new that has not bought the first course, you could buy both courses together with the Excel tools for a discounted price. And that discounted price will be available to anyone that bought the first course originally.
Yeah.
So you're not screwed. Like if it's going to be $275 together, right? That means you'll get $45 off the second course, assuming that you bought the first one.
Yeah.
So you don't get screwed by that. People have asked that. It's like, yeah, well, do you get anything for getting the first? Yeah, you get the same discount, whatever, and no promotional codes. There's no right. Oh, is it going to be a 30% off sale? If you notice on my timeline, I rarely ever do discounts. Because why? Either it's worth it or it's not. What is a $10 discount ain't going to do you any good? Like, to me personally, like, you could sign up for RotoGrinders Combo Premium, right? Click on that link in the description. You get $10 off your first month, which is great. You get $10 off your first month. That shouldn't be the deciding factor. Like, it's worth it regardless of the 10. Like, I'll pay the extra $10 because it's worth it. Because why not?
Right.
Why shouldn't I?
That's a really interesting thing too in marketing. Because I used to do retail management, and Red Bull specifically, you'll always notice that Red Bull never drops down to $1 per can, ever. They are vehement with that, in that they never bastardize their product based on price. So like you'll notice that Rockstar goes down to 10 for 10 or whatever at your Kroger or whatever. You'll notice that Monster does things like that too. Red Bull will never drop down to $1 per product ever, because they believe that their product is better than the competitors, and therefore it is worth paying the premium on the product that you're buying.
Well, I also think what's the difference between $10 like for this or 20 cents or something? Like,
Well,
Like, to me, it makes no difference. It's like what person, like for the Theory Daily Fantasy Sports, $125.
Yeah.
Right. For the first course, 15 hours. I mean, I think the best teaching of DFS there is. If I said it's $115, oh, now give it to me. Like, I mean, like what?
Well, come on. Psychologically, it makes sense. People like to feel like they're getting a deal, right? Like it's not actually about the $10. It's the same reason why Walmart does things like a rollback to $3.98 instead of $3.99.
Right, but they're a discount brand.
Sure,
luxury brands don't do that.
That's what I just said about bastardizing your product with Red Bull. I agree with you. I understand. Like from the retail standpoint, people like to feel like they're getting a deal. And
right. I'm going to go in. I'm going to get a Ferrari, and then go in and go. Okay, how much is the Ferrari? $270,000. It's like, do you have a $50 coupon? Like, like, can I get? Do you have $50 promo code? Can I get?
Can I get $50 off my first gallon of gas?
Right.
Or whatever. Yeah. No.
Right. Is that going to make that much of a difference in a Ferrari?
I mostly agree with you. I think that luxury products, absolutely, and I would consider Theory DFS, especially the advanced course, a luxury product. I don't think that it's necessary to put that kind of stuff on luxury products, but it's also not something that you can deny people feeling like they're getting a deal or getting in good or whatever when they use a coupon code. Like that's just retail.
Yeah, but that's not the type of person. Someone should understand that like you said, it's $2,500. So you're really already getting a massive value.
No, I absolutely, and I will be shoving that in people's faces when we do release this. That right. It is
our target date right now is August 27th.
August 27th. Yeah.
Right. I was gonna record. I've outlined everything. I was going to record this last week, but I had a sore throat and allergy stuff and phlegm and whatever. And I barely did the MMA show last week.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll be taking care of that. So I'm also going away for 3 days. Want to make sure everything's good before NFL season. Yeah. So August 27th, that's the Monday. I mean, and you'll come on Monday and we'll talk about
Yeah,
we also understand these tools and this course. You need all the other things as well.
Mm-hmm.
So like this, like just like in the first course, we have an entire chapter on what projections are.
Yeah,
like just a basic, almost a 90-minute statistics class. But it will not teach you how to build a projection model. It's just like this is what projection models do. Okay, so like in order to understand the theories and then use the app and apply it, you still need projections. You still need ownership figures. If you don't have ways of figuring that out, like you can build your own, you can do that yourself, right? If you want, you can do it in your head. I tell people, it's like, oh, well, I don't want to use that. Just assign a number to a player, right? You go in a football, say, David Montgomery, give him a number, 15. Okay, fine. Now give someone, and they give Aaron Jones a number, 17. Okay. Like you are projecting them. Obviously that's a completely imprecise way of doing it. Like just get the people down to numbers. And once you get it down to numbers, then you don't have to worry about the people anymore. Then you could do all this. Whatever numbers there are, they are. It's your job to try to beat the most accurate type of numbers. So I would suggest you sign up for RotoGrinders so you can get those projections. So you could use a tool like Lineup HQ to supplement those types of things, right? You could build an optimizer like James, for instance. We will have as one of the Excel tools a simple optimizer, which is basically what the sidebar here is at RotoGrinders. So basically, just you have your player pool and knapsack problem. What's the best lineup out of this pool type of thing? So you'll be able to take whatever projections and ownership that you have or whatever, anything, paste it in, and then simply make, what's an optimized lineup type of thing. And if you want to remove people and go, well, I'm going to remove this guy. So you delete that row and then you can press the optimizer again. But like you could build an entire optimizer just like Lineup HQ. I wouldn't do it in Excel. It would be very slow, but you could build it on your own. But like, if you're going to build 20 lineups, and we were talking before about building 300 lineups at a time. I could build 300 lineups in less than a minute in Lineup HQ, depending on the settings. So imagine you trying to do that yourself in Excel. You can't. Most people aren't. Anyone that needs tools like this in Excel doesn't have the skills to actually build a full-fledged a DFS optimizer in Excel. To begin with, you don't even need these tools anymore. So like these things are compatible and companions to subscribing to a site like RotoGrinders.
Right.
So combo premium for all the sports, or the NFL's coming up to MLB, NFL, NBA. Click on that link in the description. You don't need to get $10 off the first month, but we'll give it to you, right? If it's worth it. These are the tools that I use. So just understand that these Excel tools are not replacing anything that you'd be doing. They're supplemental. They're efficiency tools. They're meant for you to be more precise, for you to not catch your own mistakes, those types of things. But in and of themselves, like in order to paste in lineups, you need a way to make lineups, right? And like you could hand build them and then, export your DK entries file, but most likely you're going to be using this in tandem with lineup HQ or relevant optimizer.
Yep, that's exactly right. I think that lineup HQ, and that's what I use as well when I'm going to be building out MME. Like I have Paydirt, but I don't have an optimizer over at Paydirt because I don't think that I could build an optimizer. And I have tried. I have tried to build one for NBA, but I think that RotoGrinders provides a terrific product for what you can get and for the amount of money that you have to pay for it. So even though I own my own site, I build models for everything, but I still like to use RotoGrinders and especially lineup HQ to actually build out my lineup sets and actually do the calculations and everything like that, because they just do a terrific job. So
right, just like in NBA projections, I can build an NBA projection model.
Yeah,
not sure about MLB because MLB, I there's no way I get as good as Cardi. But our basketball projections here, like if I were to build a model, it would probably end up being about the same as like NBA projections are not difficult, are probably the easiest to model, and it's just a matter of putting in the right minutes and everything. As long as you're doing that, you're probably on the right track. Why the hell would I spend all that time to do that when I could just subscribe to RotoGrinders? Right. So like that, it comes down to that type of thing. NFL, like if the types of people that are sitting there going, are projections worth it? Is buying projections worth it? It's like, well, can you do it? Well, if you're not instantly saying, if you don't instantly have your own model, then it's worth it.
Right.
I don't think people understand, because people have asked me, they probably asked you before, can you teach me how to build my own? And I go, why? What? The cost? The time it would take for me to teach you, and for you to do it from scratch, and then also pay me to teach you. We already have items out there. It's like, well, I think I could. Can you build one that's better? It's like, it's not a matter of building one that's better. It's that how much better is it versus the time and the cost that you put in.
Here's what I usually will tell people when they ask me now. I say, if you want to build a projection model, you should build it for fun. And it is fun. I thoroughly enjoy building models. Otherwise, I would not do it. But I have taken 10 years to get as good as I am at what I do. And if you want to just like do it off the cuff, that's great. You should go and you should do it and have fun. And, maybe I'll put together some products. Maybe for the NFL season, I'll put together a course over on Paydirt on how to build a basic NFL model that you can use for yourself, right? But it's likely not going to be better than what you can get for the time investment and for the money that you're going to be spending to just go to RotoGrinders and just get a subscription and just use theirs, because that's what a lot of the best players in the world are doing too. So like, it comes down to what your goals are with DFS. And in coaching sessions, I always say it. I start with, what are your goals? If your goal is to make a little bit of money on the side, that's great. If your goal is to be very profitable, then you have a different path. But if you just want to play to have fun, then it's very different, and you should just be doing things for fun. But if you want to like make money, just be efficient. Just be efficient with what you're doing. That's the best starting point.
And talking about coaching, if you sign up for RotoGrinders Premium, You get access to my Blender's Game Theory channel, and I do 2, 3, sometimes 4 a month private coaching sessions in a group environment. And the next one is tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern. So the link will be posted in there 5 minutes before. I have a form to fill out if you want to participate, ask questions, and via video. And it's your own private. It's almost like it's not like an AA meeting, but it has that type of vibe, right? Right, 8 to 10 people typically, or whatever, and it's just like, who wants to go first? And then you can feel free to share your screen, ask whatever you and personalized help, anything you want. It doesn't cost extra. It's a value, just something I enjoy doing. So the next one is tonight. And James, people can check out your stuff at paydirtdfs.com.
Yeah, paydirtdfs.com. If you have not been following along, I've been posting the MLB True Average Report every single day. It's free. It highlights some guys that are good leverage and likely to regress based on a new metric that I have for the baseball season. So that's free. Go check that out. Otherwise, grab a subscription. Again, like every single sport, and you can utilize it all with RotoGrinders as well. So definitely use it as an add-on, and yeah, a lot of cool stuff coming up. So
later today, 5 o'clock Eastern, Grinders Live. Dean's back. Dean's back with the boys for Grinders Live. Then Crunch Time immediately afterwards. Let's see. Is there any? Oh, there's some weather spots. There's Baltimore, Philadelphia. So, okay, so Roth will be back with the weather report and everything leading you up to lock for the MLB baseball slate. Give me those thumbs ups on your way out the door. Give me the thumbs. Helps us out. There will be no Monday show next week. Just to let people know. I'll let people know on Friday also. I'll be away I'll be away Friday. There'll be no show Friday, Saturday, and obviously Saturday, Sunday. No show Monday. So no MMA this week for me. It's just programming notes while I'm here, and yeah. So I'll be back on tomorrow to go over what to review what happened this past tonight for MLB, and then answer your DFS strategy questions like I always do on the DFS pregame show on RotoGrinders.com.